What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Progress Always podcast. I'm your host, Mycal Anders, and I'm here with the GM, General Manager of Next Level Performance Consulting, Alyssa Murray. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. It's 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Phoenix time, and we've been up since 4 a.m. just doing the grind. So I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and have a little conversation. You left a pretty solid career to make the transition over to Next Level from F45, big chain, managing 3 locations. And now you're here rocking with Next Level. And I'm curious, in the most genuine sense, what is it that you saw in this experience, the way that we do things, our culture, our style of training, whatever, that made you want to make that jump?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I could say about Next Level that I love, but I would say when I really wanted to shift careers, I always said, I just really want to help people. And people thought that was like so silly just because I was in a group fitness chain. Of course, I was helping people. And just based on my responsibilities, I wasn't really on the floor coaching as much. And that's just something I was doing for a couple of years before. And I just felt like I missed that. And so at Next Level, I saw opportunity to really help people no matter what their goals were. Having a background in training and studying kinesiology, I knew there's different methods and wanted to be at a place where you can explore all of that. And there's no one size or one type of workout or training that fits a specific person and that kind of thing. So I think just being able to go to a place that has opportunity and can take a customized approach to really impact people's lives, that's what drew me to Next Level. And the most corny way, I would guess, to describe what made me come to Next Level is that people just seemed really happy. I knew a couple people around, met a couple people who knew others at the gym, and they just always had good things to say. So,
hell yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that we were talking offline just before the show. We were talking about just being in the game for the right reasons, right? And one of the things that's really shown up for me as of late, as we cruise into year 10 at Next Level HQ, and one of the common themes that has brought us this far was very simply making sure that we check that happiness and fulfillment box first, right? Making sure that we were able to deliver the impact that we wanted for our people and ourselves, right? This is not a one-sided environment, right? The energy doesn't just flow in one direction. And one of the things that I was very in tune with in bringing you on board was making sure that, like, oh yeah, she's in the game for all the right reasons, right? If it's just to make a quick buck, we've had those fly-by-night part-timers or whatever that are like, always have their eye on an opportunity somewhere else, right? And they don't last long, like not here, not in the industry, right? And so I'm curious, having checked that box for yourself, where does that come from in your training history? Is that something that you got from your parents? Is that something that you just learned in your journey through in soccer? Like, where does that come from for Alyssa?
Well, I think you kind of said like maybe two ways I probably got that. I grew up, my whole family, my immediate family, we were all collegiate soccer players. And if I had one word to describe my family, is supportive. And so no matter what we're doing or where we're going, it could be like we're going for a walk, someone's going to come with me. And so kind of working in that team environment from soccer, you're always there supporting one another whether it's for a competitive game or you're showing up for, a class project, anything like that. I think that really made me want to like return the favor in a sense. We're just very giving people, and you're always there for that person. So it didn't really matter like who it was. If you all had a similar goal in mind, or if you told me what you wanted to do in life for soccer and fitness, or a fun little thing, you wanted to go take a sewing class, cool. We're going to be there and we're going to support you for that. And so I think just that giving side of me has always been there, just from my family and the sport I played from. Since I was like 4, 5.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So having been, having been a competitive athlete and playing at a high level D1 at Wyoming, right? And you have all of that experience under your belt. One of the things that is common amongst the veteran community and the athlete community is life after sport, right? And I know that you're still playing semi-pro and you're still very active and engaged in soccer. Did you encounter any quote unquote identity issues when that phase of your life ended and you moved into the professional side of things?
I love that question. Because I feel like I have a way different approach than any typical athlete. I think this may have been instilled when I first was going to college. But to answer directly, no, I didn't have any identity issues going out of college soccer and coming into the real world. When I was being recruited in high school, that process started so early. I had my best friend commit to University of Washington the start of her sophomore year. So she was 16 years old. And I felt behind. I felt all this pressure. Other people were emailing colleges, and I was telling my mom, I don't even know if I want to go to college. I'm only 15 years old. And I thought that was so funny, just because I was like, I don't have a plan yet. And I don't know. And so that just kind of came, and with my passion in soccer and of course my talent and hard work, I was able to have that opportunity. And then through college, I still had that goal in mind. We wanted to win conference. We wanted to get that championship ring, but I was also there for another purpose, to get an education. And I was very intentional about that. I was pre-physical therapy, did all of the work every summer. I never went home. I always took 2 courses over the summer for pre-PT. And I always had that in mind and what I wanted to do after soccer. And so a lot of girls were so sad on senior day and, oh my gosh, it's coming to an end. I'm like, you guys are going to be fine.
Right.
I was that person. I was like, I did everything I could. I know that this is a high level and I'm pretty happy with making it this far. So that's kind of where my head was at. And I think it started just from when I was in high school, knowing that, hey, I don't know if I really want to do this. And then like, oh, this could be my last 4 years playing at a high level. I'm going to take it. And then I just knew that's where I needed to be, and kind of finished out those 4 years pretty strong.
That's awesome. Where does your self-confidence come from?
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like I was very into measuring things in terms of performance. Just having a competitive nature, I would use that probably as like that validation. If I was working hard at practice, I was earning a spot on the roster that weekend. My club coach, when I was 15 years old, that was like the year my parents had to pay a lot of money in order for us to travel and go through a college recruiting traveling team, essentially. And a normal roster for a traveling team is 18 players. Some teams might not even make 18 rosters. They might not have enough girls. we kept 24 to 25 girls on the team.
Holy shit.
At 15. And so we were competing all the time. So he was like, I'm setting the expectations. This is what college soccer is going to be like. In college soccer, we have 25 to 30 plus girls on the team. And it's only 11 play on the field and 18 get entered in for the games that weekend. So with that competitive nature, I feel like I was able to, produce results, and I use that as my confidence. And so every action I had, if I, studied hard for a test and I got an A, that was my reward, and I knew I was doing well. If I worked really hard at practice and I traveled and played the whole time on the weekends, cool. That's how I knew I was doing the right thing, and kind of just, I guess, accepting that and taking that as far as I could, and knowing that I was doing the best that I can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I find it genuinely interesting in talking with, not just you and the team, who have all done some pretty incredible things at high levels in your own individual regards, but just high performers in general seem to have this, just a different outlook on what it means to perform at a high level, and the significance of those achievements, right? Some, seem to wear it as a badge of honor, and that perpetuates their success. And then others kind of approach from like goal to goal, accomplishment to accomplishment, like this. They have this genuine spirit of curiosity. Like, I wonder if I could be good at that. I wonder if I could do that at a high level. I'm just curious if I could crush it.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you do, it's not really a surprise, but it's not an expectation either. It's more like just validation of the skill set and who you've become to accomplish those things. Right.
Yeah.
And, now that you're in this place, you've gone from hero essentially to guide, right, in this coaching and performance consulting space.
Mm-hmm.
What has been, what do you see what's the difference in skill sets? Because like that transition can be hectic sometimes as you make that transition from athlete to coach, in that you impress all the things that you thought made you great on the field on your clients and athletes once you transition from one side of the fence to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I first started coaching, I actually coached youth athletes, and learning about training and performance was actually pretty new. When I was in high school, I wasn't doing anything extra outside of the gym. And so the gym was like fairly new. I didn't lift really through high school. I only did my senior year summer going into college. And, I was that girl that was like, I have to do push-ups and using 10-pound dumbbells for things. I was like, what is this? I don't want to do that, And so it was just a totally different shift as I went into learning about it in the kinesiology program, and starting my first job as a sports performance coach for middle schoolers and high school athletes. I just felt like I wanted to give them something or help them see something I never had, just because I had, I like facts, I like science. And so there was something to prove that athletes who had this advantage could have their performance enhanced through college, even though training in the gym for sport is not super sport specific. That's what their training is, or their practice is for. And so, not that I felt like I missed out. I just wanted to help the next people or generation of kids that could achieve that. And knowing the amount of pressure I actually put on myself to perform at a high level, I guess I could have talked about that too, but I just think I wanted to help them develop a healthy approach to being a high level athlete. Side story, I was an absolute nervous wreck when I ran track in high school. I was such a high achiever that I physically cried before every single race. I was a 1600-meter runner, and my track coach was my psychologist the hour before warm up. And I would go to her at watching the girls. I'd sit up in the stands, and she always said, "Sweaty is ready." So I had to warm up, and I'd be walking around watching, scoping out, and she's like, "Alyssa, warm up." And I would go up to her and I'd be like, "I don't want to lose my energy. I have to save and preserve. I need to perform well." And she's like, "What's going on?" And I would just let it out, my fear, and I'd start crying. And my fear was, I don't want to lose. I ended up being undefeated that year. I never lost a race my freshman year in high school.
That's awesome. As a freshman, you never lost a race?
Yeah, I was undefeated. I won state track that year in the mile.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
But I think that, knowing that pressure I put on myself, I wanted to be able to look at an athlete or even someone achieving their weight loss goals as cool, let's hang on to what goal you want. But, let's try to challenge ourselves. How can we push that threshold without making us a nervous wreck, to some extent that there's performance anxiety that's almost necessary. But how can you instill a little bit more confidence where you don't have to have that mental breakdown, essentially?
Yeah. You said the word anxiety, right? And, there's a difference between using it as a tool on the performance end of the spectrum, but at the same time, out here in some of our clients, we've experienced how that can be detrimental to performance. If you don't have the tools or the support system to kind of calm that storm, right? So what mechanisms have you used yourself, or what have you found successful with your clients to help, mitigate that anxiety, whether it's from, I have a really important PR I'm trying to hit, or I'm just trying to make it through the day at work and stay on track with my goals. Right. What are some of the instruments that you found to be proven to be successful in helping with anxiety?
The first thing is acknowledging that it's there. Because if I try to sit back in the stands while, I'm waiting for my race or before my soccer game, I'm just going to let that build up, and I'm going to, I didn't know what would happen. I'm just going to overwork myself, cry, maybe even sit out of the race, but I walked over, talked to my coach, and I then identified my fear. What is it? I don't want to lose. She would just say, "Okay, then win." Tried to instill that. But I think identifying the fear or why you feel that way, and just honestly accepting that takes a couple seconds, whether you're, trying to perform well at work and, okay, what's the outcome? What are you trying to achieve, and what's maybe getting in the way, and why do you have this anxiety? And okay, because I want to do well. I want to execute well, or, I don't want to disappoint. Those are all certain ways. So some people might get that thought and be like, nope, can't think about it. They deflect it and they push it away and they push it under the rug. And at some point that's going to build up, nope, it's fine. I'm not going to eat the healthy food. I'm just going to keep eating this. It's so much easier. I've been fine this whole time, but I'll just work out or I'll work harder, Okay, no, what are you so afraid of? You're falling back into that comfort zone and avoidance and kind of those things. So I think acknowledging and identifying that fear helps you kind of just be like, okay, I'm here and I'm sitting in it. And then kind of being able to take that next step forward, no matter if you're at a performance level or at work or choosing the right foods.
Yeah. Interesting. We just had a conversation today, as a matter of fact, where, we kind of acknowledge that in the grand scheme of life, none of us are batting 1,000, right? Nobody's 100% on their nutrition. Nobody's 100% in their fitness regimen, right? And, have you ever moved through that exercise, right? Successful as you are, right? Used all of those tools to quell that anxiety and still came up short? And if you have, when you have, how did you bounce back from that?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is very sports related to soccer. So I would say for the most part, I was able to learn positive coping mechanisms, no matter where I had the anxiety. And where I fell short, a couple times, I guess I'm thinking of soccer in another instance now that you kind of helped me jog my memory. It can manifest into kind of like an anxiety attack or thoughts of overthinking and overanalyzing what you're doing. So, for example, a work project, and say you got to make a poster. I've made, a couple of posters or maybe a social media post, and I look at it and then I'm like, cool, I'm just going to post about water. And I'm going to say, nope, that's not good enough. So then I start thinking about how I need to research more about water, and then I need some better facts that are easier to understand for someone. And I research and research and research. And I'm getting farther and farther away of like completing my task and sharing a small piece of information about water. I'm kind of overthinking and overanalyzing, and I actually never end up posting because I fear everything that I'm overanalyzing or overthinking of just something that I know how to handle or that I know facts about. So I feel like I have come up short a few times in terms of work tasks, which I think can relate to a lot of people. And I had
All good.
I had one instance in college where it affected me in my performance. And, a lot in soccer and a lot in life is you have to learn how to be resilient and how to bounce back. And soccer, my coach always said, it's a game of mistakes. You tackle the ball, you miss a pass, you just move on to the next thing. You don't even think about it. You try to make up for what you're doing. And I wasn't playing my best. It was my sophomore season. We were just a couple games into preseason, and I was an outside back, and a forward had beat me down the line. We were pretty much shoulder to shoulder. She was a couple steps ahead of me. She took a cut and had just a couple more steps and got a cross off. But in that moment, I will never forget, as I was chasing her down, because I was already overthinking my performance leading up to this play. I knew I wasn't playing well, thought my coach was going to sub me out. This girl beats me down the line and gets this cross off. I froze on the field. When she beat me by 2 to 3 steps and got this cross off against our goal, I froze and I walked, and my coach benched me right after. And the best way I overcame that was asking for feedback, especially from the coach or someone who could help me. In college, we had film, so we could rewatch the event over and over, which can be traumatizing, and it kind of was very, very difficult, and kind of, it learned a lot, it taught me a lot about having to face it and identify and recognize, which is kind of what I just said about, how I handle it or how I manage it. And so when I would come up short, I was able to face it, even though it was extremely challenging. I had to go up to my coach and say, what did I do wrong? How can I get better? How can I earn more playing time again? I lost a lot of playing time that season because of that play. My coach didn't give me a lot of opportunity to play. And so that was extremely difficult in terms of overcoming that. And so I know the sports performance world is a little bit different than the work field or fitness and everything. So I think that, there's a lot of grace that can be given to clients and people in their jobs and day to day that you can be resilient, you can get feedback, and you can learn from falling short.
Well, it's really interesting in that what comes to mind is like what you actually got benched for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because in like the immediate feedback loop, if we're playing back the tape as we thought we experienced it, it's like I got benched because I let her get that fucking cross off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm curious, what kind of feedback did your coach actually give you? Were you benched because you lost the play, or were you benched because of your reaction to losing the play?
Mm-hmm. It was my reaction. And that was the biggest thing I could take away from it, right? He didn't want to risk putting me back in the field and me not responding the way I was typically responding for the year and a half prior of coaching me. I had to like reinstill trust in improve each practice and outwork my players and condition more and kind of rebuild and still understand that coach's decision. And I guess certain sports performance things can get a little bit tricky. It's not, some things just aren't black and white, and it doesn't always work out the way you want it to.
Well, it also speaks to, and it says a lot about your coach, right? Because there's good coaches and there's awful coaches, and the awful coach benches you because you fucked up the play. The good coach benches you because there's a lesson there. There's the tactics and strategy about positioning and where you should be in relation to that girl and all that kind of good stuff. But more importantly, something that obviously has served you since then beyond the moment is your reaction to adversity. Right. And I think that's one of the cool things where sport parallels real life. Like not everything goes our way all the time.
Yeah.
It's an unrealistic expectation. Right. But what makes high achievers, high performers create that track record of success isn't the fact that they have it all figured out. It's really their response to when things don't go their way. Right. And, looking at our core values, leadership, resilience, self-improvement, loyalty, and willingness at next level, it's those experiences that really check those boxes. And there's so many parallels between sport and the military. And I think people underestimate those lessons that we take with us into coaching because they're at the far end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, it's so easy to downplay those experiences and pretend that they don't relate to this phase of our lives when they have everything to do with it. Right. So how do you introduce intentional adversity and continue to create that anti-fragile self-image, that resilience, your ability to overcome the hard stuff? Where is that practice integrated in your life now?
Man, I feel like I use it every day. To me, coaching a group class at next level, I consider that a performance. Everyone's listening to the words you say, how you explain things. And, I find they're little things, whether I forget a specific word I wanted to use, or I just stumble over my words, or, demo something not as well as I hoped I was going to. I know that I've been there before. Okay, you've messed up before and you bounced back before. What are you going to do next? And it's not to ignore the mistake, and it's not to say, oh, it's okay, you made a mistake, just keep slacking off kind of thing. It's like, no, use that as your own feedback tool towards stepping up and having a better class the next class, or correcting yourself right away and just say, sorry, scratch that, this is how I wanted to say it. And being okay with being open to that, in front of people. And in the real world, most of the time, you're really not going to get benched or kicked out right away. There is a little bit more grace, but I also think that having that self-recognition of it's okay to make mistakes. You can fix it by adjusting here and there. You kind of know your toggles and how you coach people. And with outside of classes, I think coaching people remotely or one-on-one, you can have different approaches and different ways to help people. I have one way of explaining on how I, have been there before and bounced back, but kind of finding relatable experiences for that person and how that can benefit them, or, understanding where they're at and trying to teach them maybe a different way. Maybe I was super hard on myself, and what if I never, I sat in that moment of getting benched and I never came out of it. Some people react that way, and maybe you really have to help them see that there is opportunities to do that. So, it can come out in how they're choosing their foods and how they're choosing to go about sleep, or feeling bad about missing a workout, those kinds of things. I think that's how I guess kind of adjust or use my experiences in terms of having anxiety and falling short, and trying to support people who've maybe experiencing the same thing in that moment you're with them.
Yeah. That's huge. So huge. When we're talking about empowering our clients, right, and helping them make that shift to make themselves a priority, right? Because we've chosen to actively pursue folks that have already a high self-efficacy, right? See themselves in high esteem and have achieved great things compared to the field, right? And a conversation that I had yesterday with one of our newer clients, the thing that got her over the hump and on board, she had tried it her way forever and kept coming up short. And very recently she saw a post of ours and it's like, oh my God, the missing ingredient is, and where I need the most work is just simply asking for help. Right. And
so
what a mind fuck that is. Right. Because from the outside looking in, right, we're people that seem like we have it all together, especially when you're happy about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. All the other telltale signs of having your shit together, nice cars, big houses, fat wallets, all of those things that people just assume you have it together, right? When you're genuinely happy in your existence and in your practice, that's a whole another level of having it together.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're working with folks that have that issue, right? What have you found to be the best way to break down those barriers and create enough rapport where that ask isn't seen as a sign of weakness?
Yeah, that's huge. Establishing rapport, is one thing, but, meeting them where they're at because they think, that we might have it all together. You have to show that there's something relatable, or tell a story about someone that that's been through something similar, or someone out, just a similar problem or issue. I think they need to see that they're not the only one that's been through that point or are at that stage of their life. And it just kind of makes them feel more supported. And then, they can kind of sink in and relax a little bit, because they don't have to, maybe pretend that they have to show up for their coach or their trainer. We're genuinely there to help them and to open up about those things. Otherwise, we can't help them, as much as we want to. So finding like that one thing, that maybe you can find relatable, or tell a story that's relatable, helps open up that door for them to be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that someone else dealt with that, or had to go through that, or might have a solution, And so I think it's definitely challenging to get there with that person. You kind of have to establish certain things about their life and how it can be relatable, because since we are those high achievers, and yes, we've achieved those things, we're like, how do you miss that? How do you not, sometimes it took, at the very beginning when I first started coaching, I just didn't understand why people might not want to work out, and that was so ignorant of me. Right. And no, I have to understand that there's things that people haven't done before, and things that I haven't done before, you can kind of relate in a sense, like, okay, well, I haven't been there. This is what comes to me when I'm thinking of something I haven't done. This is probably how that person's feeling, stepping into their shoes, essentially.
Yeah. Where I feel a lot of coaches fall short in dealing with their clients and actually getting them over that hump and creating everlasting lifestyle change. We take for granted that we've solved the fitness equation, right? It's, at least for our team anyway, it's fucking autopilot.
Totally.
Right. And where I feel like we do a really, really, really good job is not impressing that experience on our people.
Yeah.
Right. Making sure that we're not judging our experience against theirs. Right. They're walking their own path. They have their own experiences. They're overcoming, their own limiting beliefs. Right. And that's a pain in the ass all by itself. Yeah. And if we're not willing, to use your words, to meet them where they're at and grow them from there, like it's a non-starter. We are in turn asking them to fail.
Totally.
Right. So, what I really appreciate about everything that you just said is to say it a little differently, it's not my journey. Yeah. It's your journey. And I'm only here to help you gather the tools to become a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We don't coach people to, hey, come be more like me. Do what I did. There's the comparison game we play on social media all the time, but that's not what it's all about. Because once you start, like, someone could come in and be like, oh, her body's goals, or he's jacked, or he's so fast or so strong. Okay, what do you want? And then they're like, oh, that is goals. That's cool. But I actually don't really want to be that fast. I'm okay with like just doing, this. And so it's so weird.
But like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. There is something to be said for coming to terms with your own acceptable reality. Right. And that, I think, is, a huge chasm that we can help our clients bridge, is coming to grips with, like, there's what I thought I wanted, and there's what I really want.
Yeah.
Right. And those two things oftentimes don't necessarily line up in the beginning. Right. Got case in point, I got a guy that I'm working with, hyper successful, has, an ever growing professional practice. And, when we started working together, he wanted to engage in these protocols that, were very much in line with who he was at 25, right? Slaying it in the gym, everything's high intensity all the time. He was, had the luxury of, sleeping 10, 12 hours at a shot. You know what I mean? Like he could pull that off because his lifestyle supported that output.
Yeah.
Now he's got a family. He's got like 3 buildings to manage and, a team of, I don't know, 20, 30 people,
Wow.
That he's juggling on a daily basis. And I'm like, we get a couple of months into this thing and he's like, hey, dude, like I've been kind of crashing against the wall. I don't think this is sustainable. I don't think this is what I want. And it was a really interesting conversation because I stopped in mid-sentence and I was like, if I had told you that in the very beginning, that what you wanted doesn't line up with where you're at in life, what would you have said?
Yeah.
And his answer point blank was like, I'd have fucking fired you. Because what I would have heard was, you don't support me and you can't get the job done. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can give a client, and this sounds really fucked up when you don't have context behind it, is creating an environment and structure and support where they can safely fail and figure things out for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think so many of us spend so much time trying to layer on the right answers right off the bat.
Yeah.
Without giving them the building blocks to actually learn and implement those things.
Yeah. I think, kind of just based off like my intro and a couple questions back, I feel like all of that was instilled from us being athletes as well. It's almost like going to a conditioning session and the coach, it's your first couple weeks, you're just starting training and the coach tells you, all right, you got to run a 40 under 4 or 5 seconds, right? That would just that's like unrealistic. You're like, okay. That's almost like layering in and telling your client, hey, no, you need to do this. Or even like telling an athlete that they need to do something that isn't related to their sport. I had a couple strength and conditioning coaches that had us running like very, very short distance. And our test was a longer distance test, and it's like, how does this relate? And it's almost like asking for a recipe. It's like you're setting them up for failure. And so it just doesn't make sense why you would do that. And setting unrealistic time constraints or a specific routine that doesn't work for them. It just doesn't make sense.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And you got to be in it for the long game.
Yeah.
Like there's this specific season of your life, whether it's the, a competitive soccer season or, you got that wedding dress to get into or that bodybuilding competition to prepare for, right? That's a very short window of your existence, right? So what can we take from those experiences and extrapolate them across, the years and years and years and decades that we have once those seasons are over that are universally applicable, right?
Now your client is going to come to a point to where his kids aren't as as keeping him as busy, or maybe he's just feeling a little bit better to get back to maybe some other type of training, but like right now he needs to slow it down. He's going to be able to understand that you can shift, you can have different seasons and how you can adjust instead of just being like, this is the only way.
Yeah. When you take a principle-based approach, you can then you know what buttons to push, what levers to pull. You hear me say that all the time.
Yeah.
And you can manipulate those principles for a desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're married to any particular dogma, you eliminate that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is you inevitably underserve your clients.
Yeah.
And instead of helping them get into a state of thriving, now you're potentially the anchor that's holding them back.
Mm-hmm. That's where the people who aren't in it for the long game, you can see it early on, or you see the coaches that might not last or have that willingness to work through or overcome that themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's only helping your client, by doing that for yourself or client,
Well, yeah, exactly. So now that you're here in this season of your life, what are the things that you put in place to continue to develop and grow?
Or are you asking personally for like my own habits, or
Yeah.
related to coaching?
Yeah, because your ability to coach is also a byproduct of the work that you're putting in on yourself, right? So what are the things that you have in place, whether it's courses, mentorship, books, whatever, that are part of your habits and behaviors that make your personal growth journey, make your coaching better?
The one thing I actually took away from, becoming part of the Next Level team is enhancing my sleep and practicing what we preach. We do a lot of that physically, and the way we speak and talking to people, like the attitude and kind of just having that support for your client. But are you actually doing, or have you actually experienced the things you're telling your client to do? Not that you have to do everything and try all the things. It's just, I think it helps when you're telling someone to establish these things and knowing what they might have to go through, could better enhance your coaching. So for me, that was sleep specifically, and knowing how lack of sleep can cause more stress, or getting that extra workout in is hindering you versus benefiting you. I think I've established my morning routine and working on the nighttime routine specifically to help with that. And it has changed so much. It almost just like sets up my day and helps me slow my mind down. And it makes me that much more effective each day. I feel like it's really hard for me to get up and show up to work without a smile on my face.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know a time that's happened. I feel like I always walk in and it's just like you have to be happy and you're smiling just because you've established that healthy routine of the healthy lifestyle that we talk about.
Yeah.
I have the training, I have the eating, the drinking water, and sleep was just like my one thing, I lacked. In terms of, challenging myself intellectually, is I'm always reading a book or an article. I have email subscriptions. I have in-mail subscriptions for nutrition stuff. There's always something for me to gain information from. And my only setback with that is trying to not have information overload. So that's like the only thing, but it's easy now that I have my morning and my nighttime routine. I can like set that away and know that there's time for me to challenge myself with reading and research things that I'm subscribed to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Wow.
This has been something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, relaunching the podcast and, leveraging, the amazing personalities and experiences that are within arm's reach. And, I think that our audience is going to gain a lot of value from this conversation and all the ones that are coming hereafter. So I really appreciate the value that you brought to our listeners. And, we're going to do this again for sure.
Sweet. Thanks for having me.
100%. Thanks a lot.
Alrighty. Thanks.
Awesome. You guys follow Alyssa for any training advice and tips at Jinx City on Instagram. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Next Level on all channels. The hashtag Progress Always, Next Level PHX on Instagram and on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. And remember, progress always.